Perseverance is the hanging on by your fingernails on a cliff for years. That's what perseverance is. Perseverance isn't like halfway up on it, you're kind of climbing up or even climbing. No. Perseverance is like that cliff that's inverted and you're literally hanging on by your fingernails. And you're able to do it for years. That's perseverance.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
Aaron, welcome to the show, man.
What's up? How are you?
Great. We met, 8 years ago, maybe, something like that.
It was probably, in a mastermind. Yeah.
In a mastermind. And
we even shared hotel rooms.
We have shared hotel rooms.
I think I don't remember where we were. Was it like the Montage?
It was Austin.
It
wasn't at the Montage.
Somewhere in a fancy hotel, and I got all the way there, or almost there. I was like, crap, I don't have a room. And you were like, bro, I got a spare queen. I was like, I'll take it.
Just to be clear, spare queen meant a spare queen, not one queen.
Yeah, a spare queen bed. And if it was one queen, I was the big spoon.
Oh
no!
I am certain
you were very kind. You allowed me to share a room in a moment of desperation. It was a really nice hotel. I don't remember where we were. Four Seasons, Montage, something
like that. We had some really good conversations, and the things where we really got to know each other was in Mexico, and with Tony and some others, and some great dinners at what was that hotel? Punta Mita.
Yeah, it was the Four Seasons Punta Mita.
That's a Four Seasons hotel.
I remember going to see Senor, and our wives got to meet, and we hung out there.
Yep.
Talked for hours. It was a good time, man. Really good time.
So that's where we really got to know each other, and just, it's fun getting to know entrepreneurs as entrepreneurs, successful business people, and then you get to know people on a personal level and at different times, and that's what we've been able to do. And we've just stayed in contact over the years. And you're the one that originally told me to start this Facebook group, and I didn't do it for like a year, maybe 2 years, and you're like, just start it, and here's how you do it. You had a web, you called me up and showed me and walked me all through it. And now I think, why didn't I do that sooner? And you've done so many things right in business, and very successful from, a monetary standpoint. You're not in franchising, and you've had some bumps along the way. And I think all these, entrepreneurs can learn a lot. I've learned a lot from you personally, and I still continue to learn a lot from you personally. And that's why I asked you to come in and be a guest on Franchise Secrets. So why don't we back up and get into a bit of your story to set context for everything?
Okay. Reader's Digest version. I am the oldest of 6 original children. My mom didn't remarried, ended up being the oldest of 9 with some step and some half sisters in there. And then my dad left when I was 11, single parent house, really until I was 11. My dad was never around, but then he officially left. And then my mom didn't remarry till I was 18. So I was really mostly without a father through my growing years. And then quit school at 8th grade, went to work full time as a freshman. Didn't go to high school, and broke horses for a living. Did construction, drywall, built decks, you name it, painting. And then one day I wanted to start working on cars, and I bought a car, flipped it, and sold it. Somebody asked me to work on it. I did it again. Before you know it, people kept asking me, and I was working on Saabs back then, or the car Saab, Saab, not like a sob story like you're crying. And I got kicked out of a little one-car garage in downtown Franklin, went from there to a barn that I was paying $100 a month for. Then started renting a single-wide trailer in front of it for $700, and I think I was there from 99 to 2004. I was a youth pastor during that time. I got married during that time. Probably had a couple kids right before I moved out of that barn, moved into town, and my business started losing money once I moved into town. I didn't understand bills and P&Ls and profit and loss. And as I went through that period of time, I got around some smart people, joined some masterminds, learned some things, started making money. And by probably 2007 or 8, I was finally comfortable. I tore down the trailer. Actually, didn't tear it down. I sold the trailer for like $500 that I lived in the single wide. And then I built a house right there and lived in that house for a couple of years. And I was happy. I was probably making 180 grand a year, and life was good. And then somebody came along and said, "Hey, we want to loan you money." It was a bank, and they said, "Let's build this building." And then I went to go build the building in downtown Franklin. It was around 2008. You know the rest of the story. Bank pulls out of the deal, and then after 2008, I decided to go open up a second location. And I'm skipping a lot of very important details, but for the sake of time here, the second location exploded, did really well. It was the right place, right time. And I remember by 2011, I called my wife up, and I had 2 shops, and I had done 160,000 in Franklin, and I netted 40 grand that month. And I'd done 223 in Nashville, and I had netted 64, 65, and I'd made over 100,000 in a month. And I called my wife up, and I said, "Babe, you're not going to believe this." She said, "What?" I said, "We just made over 100 grand. She's like, "We haven't been doing that a couple of years." And I said, "In a month." And I was freaking out. Like, I'm a couple of years out of the trailer, you know, I'm like losing my mind. And so, I think at that point, things started to do, you know, I had a bank trying to sue me for the property that I had bought, and I wasn't building a building on it. And then from there, I opened that second location, and the bank kept trying to sue me. I eventually countersued and got that settled. And but I didn't have anything huge happen around 2008, but that I know other people lost everything. Around 2011, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna open up a third location. So I opened up a third location right after I had that big month. It was in September, and where the big month was in March. And I spend a ton of money. I, get everything remodeled, buy a bunch of nice loaner vehicles and a lot of new equipment, get the shop opened up. And it was in an old dealership building. So I said, what the heck? I'm just going to open up a car lot here. So I opened up a car lot, and then we roll into 2012. And between the 3 locations, I make $1 million, almost $1 million that year, $4.5 million in revenue. I'm like, I don't know, 32, 33 years old. And I'm sitting here thinking, dude, I'm on top of the world. I'm crushing it. 8th grade education, making almost $1 million a year. I'm super happy. Sorry, I got a sign blah, blah here. Super happy with how things are going. And I'm like, dude, I'm crushing it. Well, then I didn't know car sales, and I decided to hire someone that did. And this guy ends up stealing from me. Right at the same time, I built my wife her dream house, and the dream house costs a lot of money. And you know how theft works. Theft shows up always at the most convenient time, right? Plenty of money laying around. And so I get my butt handed to me, and I go to the bank. I tell them what's going on. The bank, rolls up the red carpet, slams the door shut. Everybody blocks me out. It gets real fast. Long story short, between 2012 when this man stole from me to 2015, I ended up $5.5 million in the hole. The original theft in the money that it took to close the car lot was about $1.4 million, like $1.375 million. But the original theft itself was $675,000, and I went and I borrowed another $500,000. Had I done the math, the original theft and the decisions he had made to put the car lot in the position it was in was probably around million, 1,200,000, but then it cost me like a couple $100,000 to shut it. And so that money hitting all being due at once, I went and I took out loans. I, didn't pay vendors, etc. And interest and fees started piling up. And my bookkeeper didn't pay my 941 payroll tax payments and didn't tell me. And I didn't understand balance sheets. I understood P&Ls at that point. And all I saw was everything was getting better on my balance sheet. And I was like, man, no one's squealing. Well, she had just stopped entering in anything for payroll taxes. And she kept thinking, I'll catch it up next week. And to her credit, she was trying to shield me. But, it's $839,000, if I remember the number right. And the fees and penalties were another $800,000. So all of a sudden, all of these things started snowballing. I owed the state of Tennessee. I owed everyone. When I got stolen from, I had the FBI, the TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, the Murfreesboro Police Department, and I think it was a state trooper. I can't remember. There's 5 or 6 of them in there. And, the IRS. I asked the IRS, he just said, why are you here? And he goes, because you would have made money and paid taxes. I said, you guys get me on the way up and on the way down. I just couldn't believe it. And so here I am, trying to be a, baller, make it happen. And I get thrown on my face. And that 3 years was awful. And then it continued to be awful through 15 and 16. It was just less awful. But, from like 2012 to 2015, it was brutal. And I don't need to get into all of it. It was a very, very rough time for me. It gets me emotional when I get into it. But I learned a lot. And anybody who's ever had tremendous financial stress, it overcomes and overwhelms your body to a point where you feel it physically, like it just takes everything out of you. Well, some point in there, I broke down and just bawled my eyes out. I'm asking God why, and had some people that were loan sharks that, not like loan sharks that are institutional. They were like friends that I knew and went to church with. And they were charging me ridiculous interest rates. And the crazy thing is now I've said to myself, if I ever met anybody else that was in trouble, I would try to help them, but be as fair as possible. I never want to be what someone was to me. And so, I've tried to remember that. And that's also meant I haven't gotten every investment I've pursued, because some people don't agree, but I'm never going to, really take advantage of somebody. And so I went through this period of time in a really bad spot, got out on the other side, reading a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I read this book, and in my house, I joke about this, but I always sleep driver's side, and my wife always sleeps passenger side. Even though in real life, she always drives, we're together. She never lets me drive. And so I jump out of the bed, and I'm marching around the bed, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm like super pissed off. I'm reading this book. This book is basically saying, Marcus Aurelius comes up on the army, the enemy, and he can go into the sea or he can go through the mountains. Both are going to have loss of life and take forever. Or he can go right through the obstacle, which is the army. The obstacle is the way. And I kept trying to borrow my way out of the spot. I kept trying to get SBA loans and all this stuff, and none of it was working. I was so frustrated, so angry. I just couldn't find a way out. But I wasn't doing anything. I was just living it, surviving. I kept trying to, I want to focus on that. I kept trying to borrow my way out, not earn my way out. And when I got pissed off, I mean, really pissed off. And when you get really angry, you see life so clear. When you lose your temper, it's too far. But when you're angry, you're like, that guy's taking advantage of me. That girl's taking advantage of me. This person's taking advantage of me. And you see it. You see everything they've done, black and white. But then when you get less angry, they're not that bad. There's this or that because of your fear of confrontation, etc. Well, I got pissed off, and all of a sudden I started firing people. I started hiring people. I started changing what needed to happen. I started getting things going, and all of a sudden my profits and all my auto repair shops started going straight up. So as I got through this period, and remind you, I had the car lot, I had my auto repair shops, my auto repair was doing great. But then I went and I saddled all that debt on my auto repair shops. At one point, my debt payments were about $125,000 a month. And so I had to make $1.4 million before I paid me, before income tax, just to survive. And that was such a difficult, scary time. We got through it, got it all paid off, but that scarred me. And so now I have courses on balance sheets and P&Ls, and I have an 8th grade education to get trade school credits, which is ridiculous. I have never even been to a trade school in my life. And I taught a finance class at my church, and I had guys in there that were professors teaching it, and they told me I was teaching them. And I was like, what the heck? But here's the difference. It was because the pain, I learned it at such a deep level because of the pain. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that their pain is what has brought them so far because they've learned something so deep, right? And so one day I'm at an event. I'm sitting in the back of the room. They pass the microphone to me. I say a bunch of stuff that's pretty aggressive. I'm still pretty jaded, right? Some people come up to me after the event. I'm afraid they're going to kick me out. And they start asking me all these questions. And they're like, dude, you know more than the trainer? I'm like, no, I don't. And I just try to get out of there. Well, this one guy keeps chasing me and talking to me. And one day he just says, what would you charge me to work with me for the summer? And I was like, I don't know, 10 grand. And my wife was like, don't be mean, tell him 7. So I tell him 7. And he immediately texts me the front of his credit card, the back of his credit card, and his billing address. And I'm like blown away. I didn't know what to do with it. My wife did, though. She told me to run it. So,
attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are 2 really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. You were at a conference, kind of an industry conference.
yeah, just an auto repair conference.
Auto repair conference, and you had the mic asking a question or giving some feedback or something like that. Somebody from your experience and what you were going through and kind of things that you've learned, and then somebody, some smart person in the room's like, this guy knows more than I know or can help me in an area that I need help in, and is like, I'm going to pay it. And you're like, I'm just going to throw out a nice big number out there. And then you ended up running a credit card for seven grand to help this guy.
A firm. So affirmative, sorry, pilot term. So I'm sitting here going, what the heck? What the heck? My buddy goes, dude, let's grab a cell phone and some $30 Amazon likes and a black sheet, and let's record this. Instead of just talking to him on the phone, let's record it. Maybe somebody else wants it. So we do that. I write it all out in 2x3 Post-it notes. It's so much information. I didn't think I knew anything. And then I cover all these walls. I can't even get it all to fit. So we narrow it down to like 105 videos. Each video is like 8 to 14 minutes long. I couldn't do the videos. I wasn't good at it. I could talk in front of a live audience. I couldn't talk to a black hole with camera. And one day he hands me a dry erase marker and I just nail it. Because I was just trying to talk with my hands. And so one day I'm like talking and writing and I nail it. And I was like, dude, I guess this dry erase marker really helps. He's like, it's not that. He's like, what'd you eat today? I was like, oh, dude, I was in a hurry. He's like, what'd you eat? I go, Taco Bell. So then he's like, but what did you eat at Taco Bell? 2 chicken soft tacos, 2 soft tacos, an order of cinnamon twists, some nachos. And he's
Sounds
like,
horrible, man.
oh, that's horrible. And he's like, what did you drink? I said, Mountain Dew. And he goes, it's the dew. He runs down the hallway. This is like late 2016. He comes back with a 2-liter of Mountain Dew from the technician's fridge, pours it in a cup and says, drink. I drink it. I stand, and I don't drink coffee. I don't drink tea. I don't really ever drink soda. It was just a rare thing. But you get caffeine in me and you'll know it. And so I got in front of that camera. I knocked out my first 6 videos without a mistake, without a retake, all of them one cut. And he's like, we're on to something. And I shot all those videos, and those videos today made me millions. Just being absolutely transparent, it's blown up our consulting company. I never thought it'd become a company. I was running it on a napkin on the side. Now it's my main gig, and my brother is doing an amazing job running the shops, better than I could have ever done. Got 10 locations now, multiple other investments in other industries. Our coaching service now is over, I'd say right about 1,000 clients, over 1,200 locations, and now about $2.5 billion in revenue. And it's a heavy load to carry and lead, right? That's a lot. And so from my point of view, I now going, okay, God, how in the world did this happen? But every time I get on stage, I'm able to teach about management. I'm able to teach about marketing. I'm able to teach about sale leasebacks, construction, recruiting, whatever, in a way that most people can't because of the pain I've been through, and the audience resonates with it. And then I talk about God through the whole process. There's a video out there people can watch if they have interest, called backtolifefilm.com. It's, again, backtolifefilm.com. And that's a documentary that a group made about me, based on what I had been through and what grew ShopFix. And it's a few years old now, so we are much larger than what even the video shows. But I think that a lot of people will connect with it, and it'll give them more insight into what I'm talking about. Details I can't cover here. It's only like 29 minutes long. But that hard time, I believe in, you never trust a leader without a limp. And from getting from where I was to where I am, I've had all these revelations. Management takes yesterday's wisdom, leadership takes tomorrow's, right? And so when you're in the pit, like I was in, there's no management that gets you out, because whatever you did yesterday sucked. And so you're not doing good. And so it's constantly borrowing on tomorrow. So I learned that at a core level, that ended up causing me to have an understanding that 99% of the population doesn't have of how business and life works. And I think all of your listeners or viewers who watch this will probably, if they've been through it, know exactly what I'm talking about. The ones that have never truly been dragged through the mud, it's harder for them to relate. But when you've been through the pain, when your wife looks at you and points her finger at you and says, you've disappointed my family, and you feel totally excluded from the family, and it's all your fault, and you're supposed to provide and you can't, and your wife feels betrayed by you. I mean, this is me being very transparent. This is where it was. It's a very raw, scary time. And I still remember, back in the day, I wasn't going to go over probably 100 members. Yeah, 100 even. And a guy named Vinny, he was in that same mastermind with us. I was at that same place in Mexico. I was on a peninsula with him and Tony and some others, Josh, our mutual buddy. And I'm standing there, and he said, why aren't you going over 100? And I just said, man, I'm not going to go over 100. I made a commitment, and this is just a little side hobby. He goes, dude, it had blown up. I mean, I had 100 clients like that. I mean, it was fast. and it was tracking like there was no cap. And he said, "Why are you stopping?" I was like, "Dude, I made a commitment. This wasn't what I was supposed to do. This was a side hustle." He's like, "No, this is what you're supposed to do. Everything in your life has prepared you for this." And I still wasn't getting it. And I still remember Vinny telling me, he was like, I still remember that conversation. It's crazy. And he hung on to it like a dog on a bone, man. He wouldn't let it go. He's like, "Dude, it's an empty chair." I couldn't figure it out. He stood there and he said, "It's the empty chair." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "This is the 101st chair. So you're telling that guy over there who's broke, whose wife is freaked out, he's working 6 days a week, making $44,000 a year, doing $1.5 million, and 2 weeks for losing everything. He can't sit in this chair?" And that rocked me. And he's like, wait, but if that guy sits in the chair, then you're telling me that number 102 can't sit in the next chair? You can't find one more chair? And when he kept talking about the empty chair, like, I was convicted. I was just like, holy crap. So I went back, had a hard conversation. I raised the price and told everybody this is what's going to happen. People gave me a lot of crap about it, but we got through it. And here we are now. And so it's been a wild ride. I'm sitting in I shouldn't say my wife owns it. We, for tax reasons, we got things in different people's names, but I'm sitting in a almost 100,000 square foot, 6-acre facility. That's our training center. That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy.
8th grade education, 5.5 million in debt, didn't file for bankruptcy, and it wasn't, you had a partner that or somebody that stole from you that, helped cause a lot of this to happen. Down in the dumps is not even an appropriate way to say it. From a confidence standpoint, no father figure really, big debt, hardly any education. Like, how did you have that confidence? Because I don't think a lot of people would have the confidence to say, I can do this, I can climb out of this, or give us some idea of where you were mentally and help some people out that are maybe they're probably not at that point, but you can help them get out of where they are today.
I was very blessed in that God put a lot of mentors around my life. I had a man named Lloyd who was a construction guy, made really good money, and I could go to him once every 6 months, and we would go to lunch. And had another gentleman named Howard. I told him whenever I felt like it was time for me to sell my farm. I'd done the U-turn, gotten out of the mess, but I needed a reboot. I had no cash. I'd just gotten out, and that was my restart. And I had $900,000 in equity in that farm. It was hard for my wife. And my buddy Howard, who was a mentor, told me, "Yeah, this is what you need to do." Have another guy, a man named Jim, who owned a big lumber manufacturing company, who poured into me. When I was a youth pastor, I was broke. They write us. I remember he wrote a Christmas bonus check to me 2 years back to back at $7,500. I mean, I was broke. Bill Lee, the governor of Tennessee. Bill was a mentor to me. His daughter was in my youth group when I was a youth pastor, and for years afterwards, helped me over and over and over. A guy named Greg poured into me from a business perspective, more so than probably anybody, and just continued to pour into me and mentor me. And honestly, countless others.
But what was it? Okay, so you got a lot of really good mentors and a variety of mentors, but they just didn't come to you and be like,
No, I got detail for that.
What was it about you, your attitude, your tenacity, your willingness to learn? Like, what was it about you that attracted them, or what was it about you that sought them out? Or maybe it was something completely different.
I also had a mentor named Clay, who was my first boss at the horse farm. And I remember watching a father and son, Clay and his son, got in an argument, and they made up and said sorry. And I'd never seen a father and son say sorry before. I was blown away that his dad came to him and apologized. Like, it shocked me to my core. It's, there's a saying, good soil is where people want to plant seeds. And I think I was always inquisitive. I was always curious, and people would meet me and they could tell there was something different, and I was good soil and they were willing to pour into me. And I got to tell you, my number one trait has always been perseverance. I just outlast everybody. Like, everybody. People will tell me they can do stuff longer than me. They'll commit to this, commit to that. Never can hang with me. And I would say that it's 99% of the people watching this or listening to this wouldn't be able to hang with me. But there's somebody on here that's going to watch this who could hang on longer than me. It's been through some serious hell. And what creates perseverance is the hanging on by your fingernails on a cliff for years. That's what perseverance is. Perseverance isn't like halfway up on it, you're kind of climbing up, or even climbing. No. Perseverance is like that cliff that's inverted and you're literally hanging on by your fingernails. And you're able to do it for years. That's perseverance. Now, the negative part is, because I wouldn't give up on that car lot, had I just borrowed that $500,000, closed the car lot down, got rid of most of the losses right then, because his original theft was $675, then it snowballed. But if I just borrowed the $500,000, shut it down with that, I would have been in debt a few $100,000. It would have been spread out. I could have just told those guys to pound sand. It's going to take 18 months. I'll get you paid off. And I would not be where I'm at today, but I also wouldn't have gone through all that pain. My perseverance of, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to stick with it, is what made it worse. And so my biggest strength was my biggest weakness in that moment. And I think that because people kept seeing me fight, they started rallying around me. I had an accountant that would text me. He'd shoot me a text and he'd be like, "Hey, Aaron, what do you do if you find yourself walking through hell?" I'd be like, "I don't know, Bill. What do you do?" And he'd go, "Keep walking." Sure. I was like, "Okay." And he'd shoot me another text. "Aaron, never dig a well when you're thirsty." I was like, "Oh my gosh." He's like, "Next time you're doing good, go get credit lines, get cash, borrow whatever you got to get." It's like, oh my gosh. I started figuring out with banks that the way banks treated you as bankers, they were blinded to debt, but they loved cash. So I went and took $300,000, stuck it in a CD, borrowed against the CD, had $600,000 now liquid cash. No banker ever asked if that first savings account was pledged against this other, or the first CD was pledged against this other cash sitting there. All they saw was $600,000. Yeah, they saw the other $300,000 in debt. They didn't care. They just saw $600,000 in cash. And I started figuring out the system. And it was one thing to fight the system. But then one day when you finally figure out the system, you're like, wait a second, it's not that hard. It's just a human on the other side that gets all googly-eyed when they see cash piled up. And so as I started realizing that, I started adapting how I was doing things. And, I told you about, I ended up owing 941 debt because that bookkeeper didn't pay it. Well, 941 debt's not bankruptable. And you can't negotiate it. Like, you can negotiate your income tax. If you own income tax, Eric, or if I own it as Aaron, we both could get behind, go to the IRS, probably work something out like you see on the TV commercials because it's your tax. But 941 payments, it's one thing to screw up on the matching payment from you, the employer. It's a whole other one to not send their portion out of their check to the government. And that's not negotiable. It's a big, big no-no. The worst of all of them. And I ended up talking to a bankruptcy attorney, and I'm like, can I go and file bankruptcy? This is what made me break down and just lose it and cry and just kind of have a come apart for about 2 hours. And I'm sitting here trying to figure it all out. And I meet this guy and he goes, "You can't file for bankruptcy. It's non-bankruptable. You're screwed. It's attached to every one of your LLCs. You can never pay yourself more than $100,000 a year or you'll red flag the IRS. They're going to take everything." By the way, my wife was not a signer on the checking accounts until everybody on here, if your spouse is a signer on any checking accounts, take them off. We've got a rubber stamp my wife can come in here and use. I mean, what do you do? My wife is still a majority owner in half of our stuff, and I'm a majority in the other half. So ownership is still there. I just didn't make her a signer. When you're not a signer on the checking account, it affects your liability for tax payments. So thank God the IRS was not able to take my house because my wife was not a signer on the checking account. So her 50% ownership in our home, our estate, my four-wheelers, my tractors, my cars, everything at the house, my furniture, they couldn't come after it because she owned half. And she, even though she was a part owner, was not a signer on the checking account. It's crazy. These little stupid rules. I'd never used business credit cards for personal things to pierce the corporate veil. I always used a personal credit card and kept it on the business balance sheet. And I did all these little stupid things that benefited me that I didn't find out until later were the right way to do it. And at the same time, I found out all the wrong things, owing the 941s, et cetera. So I started going to all these mentors. I remember going to Greg, and he was like, dude, I don't even know what to tell you. You got to find a way. There's got to be a way you can file bankruptcy. Just start over. I said, there's no way. It's non-bankruptable. I went to Lloyd, and Lloyd was like, oh man, Aaron, I mean, and so everybody I go to is like, you're screwed. And so I'm sitting here going, all my mentors are giving up. My wife is giving up. I feel like God had given up on me. He hadn't, but that's how I felt. And I'm just feeling like it's over. And I remember at that meeting, now you got to remember context. At that meeting, I'm jaded because I've been stolen from, but my dad had left as a young man. I'd been fired as a youth pastor twice, even though I was very successful at both places. It was not, I always thought it was because of me. It wasn't. There was drama with the head pastors at the church, and they were cleaning house. At the time, I didn't take it that way. I took it like I did something wrong. And so rejection. And then I was also canned from a mastermind I was in. And so I had a mastermind can me, 2 youth pastors can me, and my father leave when I'm young. So I am very sensitive to rejection at this point. So in my mind, I said that last little speech at the auto repair conference, closed my laptop, put it in my backpack, and got out of there. In my mind, before anyone could reject me, I'm going to quit and leave this group. That's what I was thinking. What I didn't realize was God was promoting me, and anointing started shifting. Out of nowhere, while this is happening, other things were shifting. People would call me up for advice. No one was listening to me before. Now everybody's listening to me. My own father wouldn't listen to me on certain things, and all of a sudden he's listening to me. He had a gas station. He was asking me what he should do. I was like, what the heck? Dad's listening to me? My mom called me up and asked me. No one was ever asking me for advice before. All of a sudden, everybody did. And I realized that I had, something had shifted. I was in a new place. And I was like, holy crap. And so once that clicked, and I started seeing all these changes happening, the confidence started going like straight up. And when I started realizing, it's kind of like the crowd theory. Like you may not think your buddy Bill's a big deal, but all of a sudden when you see somebody else run into at the airport, go, dude, Bill, what are you doing? Like, oh, dang, man, they really like Bill. If you get on the plane, 3 people go up to Bill. Bill, oh my gosh. You're like, holy crap, Bill's kind of popular. You go somewhere else, and then people swarm him. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy's a big freaking deal. Yeah, I know Bill too. Hold on, let me get a selfie. And all of a sudden, because of that, everybody starts crowding around, and you can't bring you honor. Honor only comes when other people talk behind your back in a positive way versus behind your back in a negative way. If you bestow honor on yourself, it comes off as arrogant, cocky, and bragging. If other people bestow honor on you, and you're like, oh, no, it's the team, blah, 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 but they keep putting honor on you, you become the one everybody wants to follow and pursue. That started happening to me, and I started going, what the heck? And I mean, in a fast transition from 16, really 16 was the transformation year for me. 15 is when I got pissed off and started doing crap and turning things around. But 16 was the year that was the transformation. And the confidence wasn't there. I kept feeling like I shouldn't be doing this. People shouldn't be paying me. What the heck? Well, what I didn't realize is nobody else was confident. All I needed was 1 ounce more of confidence than them. That was it. And then people just started flooding behind me and getting behind the vision. And then all my mentors, you don't outgrow mentors, but you do get to a point where the mentor becomes more of just a sounding board versus before where they were literally giving instruction. And they started coming around me one by one going, I can't believe this turnaround. This is a movie. Like they were like, this is insane. I was the golden boy, then everybody hated me. And then I was beyond anything I was ever before. And it was a rocket ship. I mean, even when I went to buy this building, banks did not believe our financials because the hockey stick was so steep. It scared them. They were like, this is a flash in the pan. And so when you asked about how did you have confidence to keep pushing through, it wasn't just confidence. It was a series of events that I feel God orchestrated to turned me into what I needed to be to help all these other people that were in a lot of trouble.
There's been so many nuggets along the way in this conversation, and we focused a lot on like the challenge, the failure, the lack of money, the lack of confidence. Also within the story, you've dropped little clues of asset protection, making decisions to, insulate yourself. We call it bubble wrapping brands, and we're talking to franchisors to bubble wrap their brand, to protect the brand. Franchisees should be thinking the same thing. All entrepreneurs should. Just reminds me of conversations that we get to have around really smart people, Aaron, that there's complexity to it, but you get to a certain level in business where you're making a certain amount of money, or you don't want to lose certain assets. And you need to have really smart advisors around that thing. That's why I had Garrett Gunderson on the show a couple of weeks ago. We can't talk about that kind of stuff today, but I know that you're passionate about it. You are building a lot of your assets outside of like your core business. But I mean, that's something that I think all entrepreneurs need to be thinking more about: protecting your assets, having more passive income. Investing in, like, you're a big real estate investor. Give us a sense though, right now, where are you? I know you're pretty private with like where you are today with your success, but can you, what clues can you give me, or how detailed can you get?
Yeah, I would say roughly 45, 50 million in revenue on the stuff that I own 100% of, maybe with all my investments, maybe 65, 75 million, probably, of companies I'm 25 to 75% ownership of. And then I'll just say nets are substantial. And then I'm a big cash guy. A lot of people worry about, you talked about liability, personal guarantees. I'll sign a personal guarantee all day. I don't worry about it. People talk about, I think it's don't even focus on that. If you set a lease up correctly, like any of your guys that are trying to do a lease, it's so easy. If I'm opening up an ice cream shop, that could be an easy franchise, and I'm not sure it's going to work. Instead of worrying about a personal guarantee, because of all the legal crap you're going to end up in a couple of years anyway, I'm going to go into that building. I'm going to plan to be successful, and I'm going to do a 2-year initial lease. I'll do all the build out. I don't want them doing the build out, because then it adds to the lease and makes the lease more expensive forever. And then I'm going to do 4 or 5 year terms. I'm going to make sure I have a non-disturbance in each lease, which means if the landlord goes bankrupt, the bank will not disturb my lease and will come to me first. So I'm going to have a right to sublet in every single lease. So if crap hits the fan, I can go lease it to, some other business that's going to go in there. And I'm not going to worry about a personal guarantee, because the personal guarantee gives the landlord comfort. If I shake someone's hand and say, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to pay you. It's just that simple. I instead focus on strategy on the front end. Like, even on a lease that has a 3% annual increase, I don't even worry about it. I'll negotiate a 2%. But let's say that isn't even an option. I like to pull a numbers game where most people can't do the math. I say, look, give me one lease that holds for 5 years. At the renewal, it jumps 10%. Or if you want a 3% increase, it jumps 15%. And they go, oh, okay. Well, what they don't realize is the initial term, if it had gone up 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, for that first 5 years, that is way more money for me as the tenant paying out than if I just had it flat, and then the next year it jumped to 15. In their head, though, they just hear 15%, like, oh, that's a much better deal. And so I try to be very aggressive on my leases and try to focus in. And I would tell everybody here, do not deviate from your core business until you have more capital than you have brain power to work on it. Like, I have a friend who had a large exit. Let's just call it around 100 million. And it took multiple years to deploy the capital. To deploy capital efficiently, accurately, without risk, takes years. You'll have to just park it making 2% while you just, all right, what am I going to do with this $1 million? What am I going to do with the next million? What am I going to do with the next million? I would not worry about passive income. I would not worry about anything. I would double down and crush it on what I know. Once I have so much money piled up, and that could be just $3 or $4 million. It doesn't have to be a lot. But once I have so much money piled up that it's beyond my brain power to deal with it, and I now finally have to get into something else because I'm so stressed out running my normal gig, then I'm going to finally diversify. But I'm going to stay focused and stay on that thing. Everything I've done has been in automotive, and I've kept it that way until just recently. And even some of the business I've invested in focus on the automotive space. And so I would encourage people to don't worry about all your eggs in one basket. Just watch the basket more. And then as you are watching that basket and you're knee deep in it and you're focusing on it and you're growing that basket and things are starting to produce for you and you're like, man, I'm really starting to click. You may go, oh, I got 100 grand. Now it's time to diversify. Hell no. You're just now scratching the surface. You got to stay focused. Get a few $1 million under your belt. Pay income tax. Do some cost segs on your real estate, meaning buy your building, own it inside as an owner operator, depreciate the crap out of that with bonus depreciation, which is a cost segregation analysis. There's companies that do that for you. It can help you with it, or the nickname is cost seg. It can help you with your income, really bring it down, or bring your taxable income down so you don't owe as much tax. But stay focused in your industry so you can get into real estate. Again, if you're an ice cream shop person, you can keep opening up ice cream shops. You can keep opening up Dairy Queens, buying your real estate, right? And then depreciating that real estate. And so people have to understand that it is very, very dangerous. There are people right now who've gotten a couple $1 million and they've gone and invested $500,000 in some startup. They don't even realize it, but it's all gone. They think that startup still has money. It's gone. No one listening to this podcast that's doing, almost, I don't know, anything under 50 million, under 20 million even, should be even considering investing in startups. I meet so many people that are making $500,000 a year and they go and they give their buddy 50 grand to go start something. Like, well, there goes that 50 grand. Like, you don't need to be doing that. Focus everything on your business. Put all the poker chips on your business. Go deep on that. I had friends that owned rental houses. I had friends that had small apartment complexes and duplexes. I had nothing. All I had were auto repair shops. And all of a sudden I was making 10% more than them, then 20%, then 50%, then 3 times what they were, then 10x what they were, eventually 20x, then 30x what they were. Now I can go buy whatever I want. The building I'm sitting in, I paid $19.5 million. I've already got probably $9 million in cash in it between the down payment and a bunch of remodel crap I've had to do to it and improvements. So you have to see, there's a reason large companies scale through leasing. When you see them lease, and they keep blowing up, getting more and more locations, that is because the cost of capital to pay a down payment on a building and get it all up to snuff, pay the property taxes, et cetera, is so great, it inhibits growth. Even whenever I got up to 8 locations, at that time, I almost leased everything. And then I went back to landlords and bought them. So I would encourage people to think through that process. They can even do a sale leaseback with a REIT, real estate investment trust for those that don't know it. But where they buy a building, put their ice cream shop in it, get it cranking, sign a lease to themselves, turn around and sell the lease. The value of a commercial property is not the building, it's the paper. The lease on the property is what brings the value. And so if you get a great franchise and you get it really rocking and get it going, dude, charge yourself the maximum rent you can and still leave enough profit that the business looks really good. You can turn around, sell that lease, pay off your mortgage, get a pile of cash that's left over, have no debt, take that pile of cash and open more stores. Then eventually come back, get real estate. So I would encourage everyone, do it in the right order. Don't get hung up on the Joneses. Don't pay attention to your friends driving Escalades and Mercedes. They're in debt up to their eyeballs. Remember, I was in a single wide trailer from 99 to 2006, 7 years. I was making 200 grand a year living in that single wide. My brother had owned a house for 4.5 years. I just chose to keep putting that money back in the business and hold myself back. Now I have to decide what car I'm going to drive to work every day. I can go anywhere I want. You have to make sure that you think through this right and say, I'm going to, like Dave Ramsey says, I'm going to do what no one else does so later I can do what no one else does. And so I have advantages today that I get to enjoy because of the sacrifices then. And some of it wasn't even sacrifices. It was just a choice of a different path. So I'd be very, very cautious about diversifying too early. It actually may stop you from making the big money that you've never been able to make.
If you're listening, and some of these, these are just like lessons from the trenches, from just experience. If you're not familiar with cost sags and just anything that Aaron mentioned, like I know in detail everything Aaron has mentioned in this podcast, and this is surface level stuff. We're not even getting into deep stuff here. This is surface level stuff. Even like you mentioned, the lease escalations year over year. Back when 8 years ago, we were doing that in our long-term leases with solo salons. Instead of 3% bumps every year, we were able to do 6% bumps every 2 years. And that's better for us than annual bumps in lease escalations. So there's been so much in here. I didn't even get into really some of the things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the auto industry. What like some of the things that you've learned being an auto shop owner, and the differences between being a franchisee and being an owner operator, because you have 1,000+ owners that you coach. You're kind of like the franchisor for them, but you coach them. We didn't even get into any of that.
Yeah,
any
I'm basically
comments
like
on...
a franchisor. I sell my concept monthly. That's basically what it is.
What's the biggest thing that you help these owners? This is the last question. What's the biggest thing that you help these owners? What's a needle moving thing that you do with the owners?
Leadership. I would say the number one trait of anyone that's successful in the world is leadership. So I'll give you a couple basics. Don't cuss in front of your employees. I mean, every now and then, not a big deal, but if you do it a bunch, your employees are going to do it in front of your customers. Don't smoke with your employees if you're a smoker, because smoking is considered hangout time. Don't ever drink with your employees. Ever, ever, ever. I don't care if it's a Christmas party, I don't know what it is. You're holding a ginger ale, you're holding a Sprite, you're holding a water. Don't drink with your employees. If you get tipsy once and they lose respect for you, it's over. Your employees follow you because of the discipline in your life. Discipline then leads to respect. Respect then leads to influence. Influence then leads to a change in behavior. Behavior then leads to a change in results. And I teach this like crazy. And I got to tell you, if you are not happy with results, it is because ultimately there's a level of discipline that's not being practiced in your life in front of your employees. You've got to be willing to be the CEO of your company, make the hard decisions no one else wants to make, period. And that means you don't get to talk bad in front of employees about other employees. They start saying bad stuff, even if the person's horrible. All right, guys, we're not going to talk about them behind their back. Just call it what it is and say, I'll have a discussion with them later. We don't gossip. We don't cuss in front of them. We don't drink in front of them. We don't smoke with them. Any of that stuff. You cannot have the appearance of evil in any form or fashion, or they will lose respect for you. They will not fall on the sword for you. They will not follow you. You do one to many. You don't do one to one. I'll tell somebody, hey, I need you to go tell everybody that we're changing pay plans. We're doing this and this. And they're nervous. So what do? They go to each person one by 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 one. Instead of just getting them all in the room, hey guys, we're going to do this. We're going to crush it. I'm going to set up this new bonus plan, blah, 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 blah. And we'll be done in 8 minutes. Everybody's gone. And I said one thing to everybody. We all agree. What do? No, they can't do it that way. They freak out. They instead want to have one-on-one conversations. They say a different thing to each person. If you can't talk to 8 people, 8, I'm not talking like 100, 8, then you're not a leader. Now, I will also say you have to understand how leadership works below you. If you have multiple locations, which is the hardest game when you have these little pockets of 5 to 10 employees per location, those are even 5 to 20 employees, very hard. A weak leader can probably not handle more than 4 or 5 employees. Not even strong. A medium leader, 8 to 9 max. A really good leader, probably not more than 20. A stellar leader, I mean, sky's the limit. If you think about how this is all set up and how it's ran correctly, and you look at this from the big picture, zooming out, if I have a shop that does, if I have a shop doing 2.5 million and that shop nets me 500 grand a year, well, that's going to require a medium to decent leader. But if I get one shop that's making me $1 million a year and is doing 7 million in revenue, which I have one doing, that shop has to have a stellar leader. Well, you tell me, which one can I scale though? The stellar leader, for everybody who's got multiple locations or employees, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. That guy or that girl is hard to find. I mean, hard. Like takes years to find that person who can manage 20 plus people. So if I can run a concept that's 5 to 8 people and I can get tons of leaders, that's the concept I'm going to build it around. So if I'm coaching all these shop owners and I'm going, holy cow, leadership's the number one issue with all of them. And leadership being an issue leads to they are afraid of confrontation. They have a lack of gusto to be able to go and have a hard conversation with an employee and hold them accountable. And I was like that until I got stolen from. And now I do it. But before I got stolen from, it was very hard for me. I think that you are, how would I say this? I think you as the owner have to be willing to be real with yourself and understand what you're expecting of somebody when you hire them. And if you know this person isn't the baller leader that you wanted, but yet the concept demands that, you need to get ahead of the situation and do something about it. If it needs a top shelf leader, it's 20 plus people. You're like, oh, there's no more than 5 in the building at a time, yada, yada, yada. There's different shifts, etc. Sorry. You're never going to get the stellar performance. I've literally seen businesses quadruple. Same marketing plan, same employees, just a different guy or different girl running it. That's it. That's it. Because big doors swing on tiny little hinges, and it's the little mistakes they're making all day that the manager's not correcting that compound into thousands lost per day. And so if I want to grow a concept that's really going to crush it, I have to have a leadership team that is dialed in and can handle confrontation and can maintain my systems the way I want and execute on it over and over. And then all I do is set each leader up with the correct amount of staff they can handle. And I'm good. That's it. And hopefully I can grow a person who's handling 10 up to be able to handle 20, but do not expect to do that in 2 or 3 years. That's a 5 to 10 year deal. People don't understand. A 20 employee leader is a needle in a haystack. And really think about that. If I put a haystack over here, Eric, how long would it take you to find that needle? I mean, a long time. So when people don't understand that and they look at their business, they're like, why isn't it working? Blah, blah, blah. I walk in and I meet some dude, stains on his shirt untucked, neck beard full out, gold chain exposed, looks like a slob. That's your leader? You know, ding, you know, get his dip and he's spitting everywhere. This is the guy? I don't even need to go any further. I can tell a baller when I meet him, and so can everybody listening here. Winners win every single time out of the gate. And so I'm looking for that winner. I'm looking for that baller. Leadership is it. So when I get up here and I coach, I have to get on stage and I have to talk to them in a way that I am improving them as owners, as leaders. And then they reproduce themselves by making the people below them better leaders. It's all in leadership.
I walked through your shops, and I've seen the leaders that you have there. I've seen the way your probably least paid employee behaves, responds, takes care of things. It's absolutely unbelievable. So when people listening, when he's saying a leader of 20 people, he's talking about an extraordinary leader, not someone that can just, get in front and talk to 20 people and tell them, this is what we're doing.
Make sure they're at work on time or something. That's not good enough.
Oh man, we could have gone on for a long time. I appreciate you coming on and giving the franchise world some love. So thanks again, man.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.